We actually don't want money. You think, oh, what do you mean? Everyone wants money. What are you talking about? No, you don't. You want the purchasing power that money affords you or offers you. The things that money can buy you is what you actually want. So this is something that Mises says, is that no one actually wants any quantity of money, right? You might, like in the US, oh, what do you mean? I want $1 million. I want $10 million. No, you don't, because I can prove it, right? I could offer you 100 billion Zimbabwe dollars and you would say, no, thanks. I don't want that because that currency hyperinflated X years ago and it's worth nothing, right? It has no purchasing power. And that would prove my point. It's not about the quantity of money ever. It's never about that whatsoever. It's only about the things that the money can buy you. So we're looking at the economic world of goods and services through money, right? So this is why money is a language, right? We think in terms of money, right? If I'm doing the accounting for my business, I'm looking at my balance sheet and my profit and loss statement and my statement of cash flows in terms of dollars. But this is just a story, right? It's like a data compression technology telling me what's happened over the past year or 6 months or whatever the period is. And so what's actually happened in reality is a lot of people engage in a lot of different actions trying to provide goods and services to their customers, consuming other goods and services in the process, right? The input cost of the business. And hopefully your revenues exceed your cost and you have a profit. And if you have a profit, that means you have satisfied consumer wants in the marketplace in an efficient manner, right? You've done it. You've used resources efficiently toward the satisfaction of consumer wants. So the money, although it's telling a story, it is not the actual reality of human action and goods and services flowing and changing hands, right? That's economic reality, right? Every time that Amazon guy comes to your door, every time you go to the grocery store, every time you go to work, the reality of the time those employees are spending for you or you are spending for your employer, that's economic reality. And money is just the accounting system, right? Or the story, the language we use that we actually call it. I have a master's degree in accounting. They call it the language of business, right? That's what accounting is. So if you then consider, okay, money is not wealth, right? Money is just a representation of wealth. And this is, you could go into I came up on Taoism early on, and there's this saying that the finger that points at the moon is not the moon, right? The Tao, which we call the Tao, is not the Tao. So the words that I use, like they're never the thing, right? These are representations of the things that I'm talking about, okay? Money's the same, right? It's just a representational system by which we are indexing goods, services, time, etc. Then, with that understanding in mind, that it's a representation, not the actual territory. I like to say the map, not the territory, right? Which goes back to the infamous quote, the map is not the territory, which it can't be. If the map ever fully contained all the details of the territory, then it would no longer be a map, it would be the territory, basically. So if you can produce new units of this representation or print new claims, another way to think about it, on wealth, which are the goods and services, but the amount of goods and services don't change because no work has been rendered. If there is $100 trillion, let's say, of purchasing power in US dollars globally. But the tricky thing about money is you can't denominate dollars in terms of dollars. Otherwise you won't see the debasement, right? Because as we print more dollars, well, the number of dollars goes up. So you need to denominate it in something like gold to see the debasement, right? So when we increase the supply of dollars, 20%, then over time, we would expect that the purchasing power of each dollar should go down roughly 20%. But you're not going to see that in terms of dollars. You're only going to see that in terms of goods and services, the price of those goods and services. So that's why a fine man's suit costs roughly 1 ounce of gold 100 years ago, and a fine man's suit costs roughly 1 ounce of gold today. The gold has been purchasing power stable over time, but if you look at that in terms of dollars, a fine man's suit has gone from $20 100 years ago to $2,000 today. So the purchasing power of each dollar has been diluted. So this is the illusion, and I call it a cognitive optical illusion, because if I own a house, if I own a piece of real estate, if I own a portfolio of equities that you may see on your brokerage statement, many people have. If I see in 1 month, August 23, and then the next month, September 23, the dollar value on the front of that statement has gone up 10%, then I think, oh, wow, I'm 10% richer, right? I have 10% more dollars than I had last month. But the cognitive optical illusion is, what you're not seeing is the dilution of the purchasing power per dollar, right? This is what's tricking people, right? So you can keep printing money. People think they're becoming richer, but the reality is they're getting poorer in terms of the goods and services that the dollars can actually afford them in the marketplace. And this is a regressive tax too, this tax of inflation, because it disproportionately impacts those living on fixed income, the poor, retirees, pensioners. The higher of your assets is in dollars or the fiat currency being counterfeited or printed, the more you are damaged by this dynamic. The more of your wealth is in hard assets that aren't being counterfeited or printed, like real estate, equities, etc., the more you benefit from this scheme. But the one beneficiary that always benefits from this scheme are the shareholders of central banks and politically connected insiders, so politicians and typically Wall Street. They always benefit from this because they have early access to the newly printed money, that they're basically spending that money when it's at its peak purchasing power before it enters broader circulation and its purchasing power declines. So as a recent example of this, in the year 2020, following the announcement of the pandemic, the U.S. printed between $6 and $8 trillion. Right? Now, this was money that was printed to, quote unquote, save the economy and whatever. However, so what that worked out to be, if you took $6 trillion, divided it by, I forget the exact number of U.S. households. I want to say it's 130 million U.S. households. Someone could check me on that. But it came out to 6 trillion divided by number of U.S. households came out to $46,000 per U.S. household. Each U.S. household received a check for roughly $4,000 in the wake of that money printing. So you would ask yourself, okay, wait a minute, we printed $46,000 per U.S. household, but each U.S. household only received a check for $4,000. Where did the other $42,000 go? And the answer is shareholders of central banks, Wall Street, politically favored insiders, right? So this is the pyramid scheme, basically. And that's it in a way. Like, it really is that simple. You'll hear from many economists, fiat economists. They talk as if they're high priests. They pretend as if this entire system is more complicated than that, and there's real reasons why the government needs to monopolize and print money. Otherwise, we'd have the catastrophe of deflation, and we'd go back into the Great Depression, and it was the central bank that saved the country after the 1929 Great Depression. There's all of this narrative, all of this false, fabricated narrative built up around the central bank and around a national monopoly on currency. But the reality is all of that is actually causative of things like the Great Depression. So the reason we have this expanding boom and bust business cycle is because we are counterfeiting currency at scale. It's really basically that. Yeah, it's human beings like to get something for nothing. I think this is abundantly obvious to anyone who is an adult and has dealt with people in a set of commercial interactions for more than a few years, right? You've seen people be on the take or try to manipulate or scam or twist and all of this. That's true of all humans at every level across all time. And you shouldn't be surprised that the biggest corporation in the world, which is the nation state and the central bank that funds that nation state, they're also corrupt, right? They're on the take. They have designed something. Really, the central banking it's an ingenious business model. And there's a clip. If you check out my pinned tweet, we have a 3-minute video talking about what is money. And one of the clips inside of that video is I think is a New Zealand central banker. And he said the quiet part out loud because he actually says, central banking is a great business to be in. We print money and people believe it. And they laugh and they chuckle. They have this kind of evil little laugh. And that's really it. It's really that simple. Now, again, economists will try to obfuscate this with a bunch of jargon and fancy terms and deflation and interest rate controls and yield curve inversion. And like they use all of this. It's very high priest-like where you try to mystify people and act like it's super complicated. And you need a PhD to understand what I'm talking about. And this holier than thou bullshit. But the reality is it's the largest criminal organization in the history of mankind in terms of purchasing power stolen. It's used to fund endless global warfare. And it's all based on control of the most important technology in the world, which is money. So that's it, right? It's just, hey, let's talk about this and let's stop pretending like this elephant in the room doesn't exist because it's not doing it serves the short run interest of those who are in a position to profit from this, right? If you're a shareholder in a central bank, you literally never lose money because you print money and people believe it. But that is so drastically hamstringing humanity, right? We're holding back human potential by stealing from people systematically all the time, or we're undermining entrepreneurial effort and human ingenuity. So my great hope for Bitcoin is that it can disrupt the central bank and really liberate the entrepreneurial spirit such that humanity can go to the next level technologically.